welcome to my talk. There are a lot of other really interesting things going on this morning, so I'm very pleased that you decided to come here. This is a session that is ostensibly about social media, and I want to talk about social media but as part of a larger way of thinking about strategies for engaging audiences. And I think one of the reasons that social media, everybody's doing social media, but one of the reasons that social media is not getting the kinds of returns people want to get, return on investment, right, that organizations want, is because I think there's a conceptual issue at stake here. So let's start from the beginning with, I want to get to a little bit to know how y'all are using social media right at the moment. I assume, since you're at a session on social media, that you're all using social media, right? Okay. What is your primary medium for communicating through social media? How many Facebook? How many Twitter? Okay, less. Instagram. Okay, Pinterest. Okay, interesting. Anybody else have a particular medium that they use that I didn't mention that they think is just really working for them right now? What? Issue? Okay. Okay. Yeah. YouTube. Okay. All right. So, want to ask, what is the most important thing that you've learned, or what is it that you want to learn, not about social media, but through your use of social media? So, for instance, how many people here use social media as a way just to pump out information? Or primarily as a way to pump information, okay? So as a content generator, as a content stream. How many people use it to solicit people to do things? How many people use it to solicit people to do things that aren't buying tickets or coming to concerts? Okay, good. Good. Okay, so I go back to my previous question, which is, what are you learning about your audiences through using social media? Anybody want to talk about that? Interested in things behind the scenes.
Getting more engagement on pictures, photos, text stuff, not at the concert stage, but our musicians and projects at big places like this.
Okay, did everybody hear that? No. We don't have like a wireless mic, do we? Okay. There's just this one here. Okay, so what she's saying is that behind the scenes stuff, pictures of musicians, videos, how-tos, making of, things like that. Okay, that's still content, though.
I enjoy a humanized voice from the orchestra.
Okay, they enjoy a humanized or interesting voice from the orchestra.
They have more interest
They have more interest in
than just classical music.
classical music. Okay, so those are some things, but how are you using that information? So more interest than in classical music, so how are you using that?
So we try to find other ways to connect them outside of the realm of symphony or orchestra.
So other ways to connect with them. And how do you go about doing that?
If we have community engagement through our musicians or our organization will post what we're doing, like we did a 5K run, so we had pictures of our group in our t-shirts running.
Okay. So things around what the activities that the orchestra is engaging. You had.
This year, in our subscription, we have a choose your own subscription
Okay, so in a way, it's sort of a humanizing process. It's like, here are some other things that yeah. I'm trying to paraphrase what she's saying. Actually, okay. Actually, why don't we do it this way? As I ask a question, if you've got something to say, can you come? I know it's a pain to come up to the mic, but could you come up to the mic? Let's do it with the mic instead, because that way everybody will take. What she was saying is that, for instance, a music director will make a package, or somebody will make a package of suggestions, and people can choose that, or ways of kind of humanizing or showing what the musicians or people with the orchestra are doing other than with the orchestra. Somebody else? What are you learning from social media about your audience? Please. And I'm going to turn it this way so you're facing people.
Something that we've learned from social media that was a big concern early on was, what if we post something and people don't like it, and we're going to get in trouble with all of our fans? And I think something that we learned is that our fans come to our defense. And that they're loyal and they're there for us. So say someone posts something that's detracting from something we're saying, they all glom on. And they say, no, this is what the symphony is doing. They actually share our message for us if we do it right. And I think that's something that we learned about them. They know what we're doing. And as soon as someone says something, off topic, they say, no, this isn't what they're doing. Here's what they're really doing. Here's what the symphony is up to. So
they're helping to define your brand.
Yeah.
These are people who actually end users of your brand, and so they help to define it for people who might not understand it.
They do, especially if someone vocally doesn't understand it. They sort of come to our defense, which we didn't expect, but we love.
Okay. And before you talk, say who you're with, and she's from the Seattle Symphony here. Anybody else? Okay. So I'm going to take you through just a few observations here and ways of thinking about this. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask you to come up to the mic and ask them, or just pop up. I'll repeat the question. So you can use social media as a way of pumping out information, but it's a much more powerful thing if you can use it as a data collector. So traditionally, the way that we think about establishing a brand and finding our audience is by audience segmentation, right? So we do demographic studies in which we try to segment the market based on who you are. So you're black, 35 years old, you live in this neighborhood, you do this. Then we can make a whole series of guesses, basically, about what your behavior might be. And we create profiles. Now, it's not just in the orchestra industry, it's everybody. This is how advertising has traditionally worked forever. And we, from that data, come up with market segmentation, right? So we will characterize behavior based on what we define as the market. There's also, there's good ways of doing this, bad ways of doing this. You can do it with just the grossest kind of segmentation, or you can dive in a little bit deeper and get a little bit more granular as to what the behavior might be that you would expect. And then you play to that behavior, right? And every brand in the world does this. There's billions and billions of dollars spent on this thing, still today. Since the 1960s, we've also added psychographics. Psychographics are surveys, basically. We ask you about your behavior. Ask you if we do this, how will you respond? If you encounter that, how will you respond? What are the ways that you feel about this? It's a very fuzzy kind of research. It has been used extensively. but it's still not considered as stable and fundamental as demographic research. But basically, demographic research is flawed because you're segmenting people by who they happen to be. And we all know now that, for instance, the 25 to 54, which is in television they call the demo, which is really the only group that advertisers care about. Why is this? Because back when the system was being started, back in the early days of television, youth was everywhere. It's the 60s, youth, 50s, 60s, youth were making the decisions, and people of this age group were considered to be not brand loyal. You could convince them fairly easy by making the case that if they're using this kind of paper towel, they should use this kind of paper towel, and they would switch. Anybody older than that, they figure, you already made your choice, you're kind of immune to that. And so you see, particularly in media ratings, that this demographic is something that programming decisions are made. This is how television shows either survive or don't survive, right? But what has happened with social media is that we now know that people do not stick to their demographic. And furthermore, we also know that when you ask people questions, they lie, right? Not because they want to be untruthful, but they want to project out the version of themselves that they like, right? So if you ask people what kind of radio shows, what radio station they listen to, they're going to say NPR rather than country music because they don't see themselves as country music people, but in fact they might listen to it. A really good example of that is Arbitron, who in the late 00s, 2010 actually, the way they used to collect ratings in radio was to give you a diary, right? So they'd pick 1,000 people in a market, they'd give you a diary and they'd say, write down what you listened to. And at the end of the week, you'd mail in the diary, and that's the basis on which the ratings happen. 2010, they came out with this thing called a people meter, right? And a people meter, here's the people meter, oops. People meter actually clipped to your clothing, and whenever the radio was on near you, it would identify the station. And if you only listened to 5 seconds of a radio station, they knew what that 5 seconds were, right? And something amazing kind of happened. The ratings got completely turned around. So this is from 2010, and you see, okay, so a 10.1 share to a 7.9 doesn't sound like a lot. It's huge, actually. And what they discovered is that what people were saying that they listened to was not, in fact, what they were listening to. People, for instance, identified that they listened to talk radio, conservative talk radio, a lot more than they actually did. And that actually has led more or less to the death of, or the parlous times of, talk radio. It's not a format that's doing very well right now. So the point is that the demographics that we have depended on for so long as a way of selling products really doesn't work very well. And it doesn't really work very well when you ask people what it is that they want. Now, in the age of social media, suddenly everybody online, suddenly everybody going everywhere, we now have an audience that independently of anything that we do is moving around based not on where they live or what age they are. They're moving around based on what interests them. And companies like Google have discovered that behavior, past behavior, is a very good predictor of future behavior. And you can modify future behavior by identifying what the previous behavior has been. So it helps you get inside the brain of the people that you're trying to reach. How is this happening? Wall Street Journal recently did a survey in which they discovered that the average website has 64 trackers. Now, a tracker happens when you click on a web page, you go to that web page, and they insert a cookie into your browser. And then from there forward, every site you visit from then on is being tracked by that website. So they can tell you went from this site to this site to this site, you clicked on this, you clicked on that, you did this, you did that. Billions and trillions of clicks in an average month. And from that, they can tell with a great deal of precision what your interest is. Now, this sounds kind of Orwellian and awful in a way, but in another way, it helps define, it helps web companies figure out what it is that you want. Netflix works well at suggesting the kinds of things that you're interested in because they can see your past behavior. They can see that at the 4-minute mark of this movie, you turned it off, right? Or Amazon can tell that you read 14 pages into this book and you gave it up. And they can tell, you say, oh, this person had an impulse to do something, but for some reason they didn't stick with it, right? This kind of research is getting more and more granular. It helps them serve you in a better way, but it also helps people who want to know, companies who want to know what it is that you're really interested in. So there are maps of these trackers and who's tracking you, and there are actually technical ways that you can get your browser to disable the trackers so that they can't trace you, but that's for another session. And there are these maps of these things. Okay. So what are we interested in tracking? Everybody in the news business, for instance, the entertainment business, they want to find out, in the beginning, they wanted to find out just how could we aggregate as many people as possible. And in the mass culture model of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was all about how could you get the biggest audience for something, right? That was mass culture, popular culture. Now we want to measure engagement, because what we found is that people, while people will click on a page and go to the page, if they don't do anything, if they don't retain anything, if they don't interact in some way, who cares, right? We need to figure out how to motivate people to do things. And so a great deal of effort is going into, in all the big media companies right now, is to figure out some sort of algorithm for what engagement is. So, for instance, is it more important that, do you like something more by clicking the like button, which is practically no engagement whatsoever, or if you leave a comment, or if you do a puzzle, if you know, any of these kinds of things. And you can see that it starts to get, by your behavior, we start to learn what engages you with something. And all of this is actually towards a new model of how to measure our audience and to think about how we motivate our audiences to do something. In our case, probably coming to concerts, participating in something we want them to participate. In the old model, what we mostly did was measured outcomes, right? So if you go for, say you go and get a grant for something, you say, we will do this, 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 and this. And that's fine. The new model is actually to measure impact. And The Gates Foundation, for instance, is doing a lot of research these days because they discovered that you can spend enormous amounts of money on a problem and make absolutely no difference. So they have a high outcome rate, but a low impact rate. So what foundations are trying to figure out, what advertisers are trying to figure out, is what is the impact rate rather than the outcome rate. You can do 100 concerts, but if your impact, your ability to build a loyal audience doesn't improve, then it's not much of an impact, perhaps. Right? There are many ways that you can think about generating activity, but you have to be able to measure the impact. And I would suggest that for most of the things, or a lot of the things that we do, we tend still more to measure what the outcomes are than what the impact is. The leaders in this kind of research, if you want to read more about it, is at the Norman Lear Center. Johanna Blakely is a leader of a project that they're doing. For 12 years, they've been measuring impact in media. And what they want to find out is if a message gets into a script in a television show or on a news show or something, what's the impact not with what somebody will do when they hear that news directly, but what does that person do to influence something else, and measure it out 4 or 5 or 6 rings out. That's impact research. Now, I have to say that arts funders, people in the arts, have been reluctant to think about impacts in a measurable way. Because traditionally we've thought, oh, okay, so there's popular culture over here, and it's measured by how many people you can get to pay attention to it. We don't expect to have 1 million viewers or 1 million people coming to our concert. We're doing something small over here, and we're doing it for the reason of fill in the blank, right? People are worried that the impact of that might be different from the impact that you think you're having. And ironically, what the researchers tell us is that it may be that measuring impact in a scientific way, in a purposeful way, might actually confirm the power of the arts in a more powerful way than the way that we do it right now, right? So an example of output in this is a new stop smoking service, new way to stop smoking, right? So that's an output. That's what we're doing. The outcome might be that someone has stopped smoking. It's not bad, right? But the impact of that, the way we want to measure it ultimately, is to see that if they have improved health, if they have increased disposable income because they're not spending money on cigarettes, whatever the hospitals get used less because the incidence of lung cancer goes down. Those are all impacts, right? Harder to measure and to correlate directly as a result of a program you did, but much more valuable in terms of thinking about the impact that you can have, the what you're doing. Fact is that through social media and measuring how people behave, we now have the ability to be able to measure stuff like that in a much more granular way. So if you think about the traditional way we think about audiences, an audience tunes in when you tell them to. If you instead build a fan base or a community around it, they actually choose what it is that they want to engage with and when, so you have less control of them. But the fan base, unlike the audience, when the thing is over, they go away and they do their thing. The fan base actually sticks around, talks about it, interacts about it, takes it to that next level. They do something with it. So as we heard, for instance, if somebody talks smack about your orchestra, the community will rise up to defend you because they're a fan base, they're not an audience. And that moment that you convert people from being an audience to being fans is what the real power of social media is. We think about content then. How do you make this happen? So this is a service called House. It's an ecosystem for home renovation and design. So they think about it this way. The content that they create is in two versions. So inspiration, not necessarily something they're doing, but could be something they're doing. It's aspirational stuff. And what they've done is they say they've got 3 million pictures, the world's largest photo database of pictures of kitchens and whatever, right? So you can imagine any kind of kitchen or room that you want. That's an inspiration. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with them. They have editorial, in which there's a shaping of what the ideal, what the aesthetic is, right? And they call themselves the Wikipedia of home design. So it's not about just their products, it's about defining the aesthetic that they themselves aspire to and that they hope you will aspire to, right? It's not just come see our showroom, it's isn't this cool? So then they use that content as a way of building community. So they allow service professionals, people who are associated with what they do, to interact one-on-one with the community that they've created and create discussions. So what they become then is a facilitator of community and content around which it's focused on them. And finally, you have the commerce. This is the point of sale. This is the ability to buy stuff. But note that the ability to buy stuff doesn't come till you get to the other end of the chain. And there are some people who will go directly to it. But the way that you become powerful in a space is not to sell something, it's to create the aesthetic first, to create the community around it that values that aesthetic, and then give them the opportunity to translate that into something that you want them to do. All of which you can do through social media. So if you imagine content, we now, okay, so BuzzFeed, everybody knows BuzzFeed, all these websites now, Upworthy, are all, their whole business model is based on hooking you in some way, right? And the science of it is actually becoming fairly exact. For instance, Upworthy, they take content from other people, from the content that they just find, and then they create a headline that they know will go viral. So in the course of that, they will write 100, 150 headlines. And in a group of people, a dozen people, sit around and sort of figure out which headline is going to get the most buzz. Huffington Post will commonly write several versions of a headline, put it up for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, see how many clicks it gets, put up a different version of that headline, see how many clicks that gets. Whatever gets the most, then they have data to tell them which is more effective. Imagine this happening billions of times a day, right? So Google, for instance, I don't know if you saw a story last week that they tweaked their logo. You had 2 pictures of the Google logo, and it said, "We defy you to tell the difference between this logo and that logo." I got to tell you, I looked for 10 minutes before I figured out what it was. It was a very, very slight shading. They did that through A/B testing. Everything they do is A/B testing. The amount of white space, if we make it this big will more people click on it? If we make it this big, will more people click on it? So they're constantly testing this version versus that version versus this version versus that version. The most sophisticated companies in the world right now are doing constant A/B testing in which they learn things. Who's doing A/B testing here? Yeah? How are you doing it? Yeah.
We use an email service called MailChimp, and they give the opportunity to test different subject lines. Also, when we do promoted Facebook posts, this might not be side by side, but let's say we have $200 over 2 weeks, and I have 3 different posts. I send them all out there one at a time, and if one performs better than the other, then I allocate more money to that one.
And do you do this over and over and over again? So you have like 20 different versions, and you figure out what's the best?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really, but by over and over, just.
So think of it like a March Madness bracket, where you have a whole list of 64, and then whatever performs better gets to the next.
Yeah, well, and then when I go to the next concert where we have new budgets, I try and mimic the language or maybe the content or the character of the post that was more successful.
So you learn about what is more effective with your audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on Facebook, that's a little bit more difficult. But let's say I did one for our subscriptions. Like I did a reminder for the one phase of our subscription campaign where price increase is coming up this Friday, and we get 2 phone calls that day said, I just got your email. And we did A/B testing with that specific email saying either price increase tomorrow or subscription phase ending this day or whatever. And, we can kind of gauge the effectiveness of that.
So, and thank you. And there are all sorts of services now that you can use in social media that will count up how many return tweets you get, how many favorites you get, how many people click on it. So you can find out very specifically what people are paying attention to. Now, one thing your question is a good one because that's, of course, the question everybody wants to know is, does it result in more ticket sales? If that's your only measure of whether your impact is being felt in something that you do, you're probably going to be disappointed. Because there's not a direct line from getting messages out, getting people to do something, to actually buying the ticket. It might be a process that's 4 or 5 steps along, right? But there are lots of things that we do that are that way. You don't ask somebody to join your board on first encounter, right? You want them to have a relationship with you. How do you form that relationship? There are all sorts of ways. So if we want people to give money to us, we don't ask them for $1 million up front. We ask them for something small, and then it's the breadcrumb trail, right? So we have to have lots of different ways in which to engage people. So this is a chart of BuzzFeed in which they're showing which are the kinds of headlines that generate the most response from people. In this case, how many people have clicked on that headline to actually want to read the story, right? And you can learn a lot about what piques people's interest. Why are they willing to, why are they willing to go to something and not to something else? So 15 things you didn't know your iPhone could do. Well, everybody's got an iPhone, wants to know at least, what more can I do with my iPhone, right? What state do you actually belong in? It's telling you something about you. Photoshopping real women into cover models. Why I bought a house in Detroit for $500. Common thing about all of these is it's about you, right? It's about your potential. It's about what you could possibly do to make yourself better in some way. Maya Angelou, who just died last week, had a thing that said, once said that people will forget what you say, People will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel. The way that we try to engage people often is through information. Oh, people will understand our concerts better if we give them all the biographical information about that. That works well with data scientists and people who are of that mindset, right? But for a lot of people, knowing that something is a progression that goes from the tonic to the dominant and then resolves in a funny way is absolutely meaningless to them. Yet, we seem to think that more information out there will help people understand us in a better way and they'll have a relationship with us. So it's not about pushing more information out or more stuff about what we do. It's how can you make them feel something? Ideally, how can you make them feel something about themselves? That's the stuff that all these headlines, that all the measurements of engagement that we have now are saying, that it's how you feel rather than what you know. In fact, there was a study that just came out this morning. I was actually, I hate to admit it, reading my smartphone at the stoplight as I was driving here, and a little thing popped up that said, some new research that said that people are more willing to pay for, on a site, on a news site, more willing to pay for something that entertains them than something that informs them. This was in connection with news sites, how people use news sites. So if I'm a publisher, I want to think about ways not just to inform people, but to entertain them in the process. Because if you entertain them, they feel something about it. It doesn't have to be ha-ha entertainment, it can be grim entertainment, but it's something that makes them feel something. We've now also got ways of measuring the kinds of audiences that aggregate. And I'm sorry that the printing on this is too small. Not really meant for you to read the whole thing, but there's this is the 6 structures of Twitter conversation networks, right? And what you want to do is you want to kind of figure out what kind of community you're trying to attract. And you can do that by the content that you create. So there's a divided community. This is usually political stuff in which you have all the liberals over here and all the conservatives over here, and they sometimes interact, but what they do is self-reinforce. You have the unified, where people amplify the things that they go there because they want to hear other people by themselves. They want to amplify their own opinions. Fragmented, which is usually brands. So, you go to the Coca-Cola site because you love Coca-Cola for some reason, and you engage with that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to create a community out of that that translates to going to another community. Community clusters in which communities get together. Spoken Hub, which is kind of a broadcast network. That's what arts traditionally does, is broadcast information. That's Spoken Hub. And Outspoken Hub. So people feeding information in, people feeding information out. And they're not making any value judgments on what is better. For different purposes, different kinds of communities are more effective. When I asked at the beginning how many people were on what platform, one of the things you should know is look at, so the top line is Facebook, right? This is media traffic, number of people through Facebook. Facebook is still on the ascendant. This is the surprise. This is Pinterest. Pinterest currently gets more share of people's time and more people than Google, LinkedIn, YouTube, Reddit, StumbleUpon, and Twitter combined. Used to be the cliche that Pinterest was only women sharing pictures of fashion and whatever. It's now the gender differences has balanced a little bit. but the studies say that women are the dominant users of social media. It's about somewhere in the 57% of the social media universe is women. Varies from service to service, but even on some services which we thought were probably male-dominated, like Twitter, it's not true. Women dominate at every age group and on every platform. Why it's important to know that is not that women will be determining what we talk about so much as it is that it's a style of communicating that seems made for social networking, for social media. And if this is becoming the dominant way that a lot of people communicate with their friends and with larger communities, the style that we communicate with in public will become less stereotyped in terms of the demographic segmentation that we're used to, and much more defined specifically. So, in terms of breaking up the market, in terms of how things get shared, 27% of all the traffic driven on the internet by social media is Facebook, 21% is Facebook, 7% Pinterest, and 1% Twitter. Social distribution happens quickly. So within a few hours, on Arts Journal, for instance, we know that the story is going to generate half of all of its clicks in its life online within the first hour and a half. Then it dies. And you can tell what are the times of day that your audience is most online. So I want to talk about Facebook for a while, because Facebook is the largest social network. It's what we all use, but it's also incredibly controversial right at the moment, and has roiled up all sorts of anger in the last 6 months. So Facebook, when it went public, the big knock on Facebook was that how do you monetize it? How are they going to make money from Facebook? And they didn't have a really good answer for that, particularly in the mobile space. In the early days, the primary way for Facebook to make money was that they got people to buy ads on the side here. What they discovered is that nobody reads those. So if you're buying ads on the side, stop. You're not getting anything for them, okay? So what they started doing was tweaking the way in which you could buy your way into people's news feeds. So this is the traditional way. This is the middle of my news feed from this morning, and this is about 5 posts down, and it's what they call a suggested post. Suggested post by the advertiser, who has paid money to insert their post in my news feed. This is in the media business known as native advertising. They want it to look like a story that somebody, one of my friends, might have posted in the hopes that I'll click on it, right? But they always label it suggested posts, which is great. By the way, one thing that I've noticed of late is that an awful lot of things that my friends are sharing, you can see the people mostly share links, predominantly share links. It used to be when somebody shared things, it was usually from the New York Times or Washington Post, or something that they had read in media. Increasingly, I would say about 60% now, it's not coming from that. It's coming from these, excuse the expression, bullshit sites that exist only to sell things, right? They are, in fact, ad sites created only with the reason. And what they do is they write articles that look like a real article. So we've gotten into the habit, unfortunately, in our news consumption of not paying enough attention to where information is coming. We need to do that ever more vigilantly now because there are more and more of these things. In this case, a thing called Metro Mile. Well, it's labeled as a sponsored post, but I'll bet you at least a couple of my friends have posted it as a site because it's a story that they're interested in, but it's pure advertising. This wasn't enough for Facebook, so they went to this route, which is, you'll see at the top there, this is another ad, right? But it's one of my friends likes Lumio body tech, right? So if you are on anybody's site and you press the like button for something, whatever it happens to be, they're now going to use your good name to advertise their product to everybody you know. Celebrities get paid a lot of money for endorsing products. Do you? Do you want to be endorsing products? I never click like buttons because I know that it's going to be used with my name as an endorsement of it. What happens if you liked it and then later you decided that you didn't like it, right? What they've discovered is that endorsements by friends result in about a 300-fold increase in the likelihood that you'll click through something. So suggestions by friends is the most persuasive way that people are motivated to do something. Now, everybody here should be thinking, okay, so my goal is to get my community to be recommending things. It's one thing if I recommend something, but I'll have a 300% greater carriage of my message if I can convince somebody in my community to recommend it. Interesting, right? You think that if it's the source telling you something, that should be the gold standard. But in fact, it's not. It's an endorsement culture. So what you choose, we're all curators now. We all choose stories that we want to share with people, pictures that we want to share with it. It's how we define ourselves creatively. And people are constantly doing that as a way of defining their own creativity. And in the process of that, other people who buy into, what are they doing? They're establishing an aesthetic. Remember I talked before about what you need to do is to establish your aesthetic? People establish their own personal aesthetic, and it becomes a very powerful thing, powerful way to influence other people. You can do this at a personal level, you can do it as an organizational level. If you think about how you would do it as a personal, on a personal level, would you pay attention to somebody who said, hey, I've got this happening and I'm so great, click here. Oh, I'm giving a reading over here and I'm the most fabulous thing, you should come and see me, click here. Would you pay attention to somebody like that? Is that an aesthetic you're interested in? Probably not. But organizations do that all the time by saying, we've got this fabulous concert, come, check it out. Right? You got to think about it in figuring out what your aesthetic is, that it's about the aesthetic, it isn't about you. You are an interesting practitioner of an aesthetic. You're helping to define that aesthetic, but it isn't you. It isn't for promotion of you. So whenever you want to think for your organization about what are effective ways of communicating, think about how you would pay attention to a person who is giving you that message. It's a really good exercise. Okay, so this still wasn't enough. So Facebook in December did this really nasty thing. They changed their algorithm. So entire businesses have been built by collecting thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of likes on your page, right? That's what you're going for. And if you're measuring your success in social media by the number of likes you have, stop it. I'll tell you why. So up until December, if you had 10,000 likes of your page, when you posted something, that meant that a good portion of them, maybe 7,000 of them, would see your post. So you like something, that means more people are paying attention to you. You show up in their news feed, right? Well, it's not a bad way of marketing things because you want to get out to the widest audience possible. But what Facebook did in December is they said, we want to create a higher quality of news feed. There's just too much stuff out there, too much junk out there, and people are constantly posting, and it's not what everybody wants to see. So they dramatically, I think I got two, where is it? Okay, here's the thing. So of your organic reach per fan, right, February, 16%. By the time you got to December, March, it's now 6%. So what happened was that now if you have 10,000 fans, only in a lot of cases, and I can tell you this from personal experience, only 1%, 2%, 3% of your fans on your page are actually ever seeing any of your content. Well, that's kind of weird, right? If somebody's a fan of yours, then presumably they're inviting you to send them things so that you can interact with them, right? But Facebook says, no, 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 there's just too much stuff, and so we're going to give you higher quality stuff. And so we're going to limit, we're going to throttle back the kinds of posts you get. And so overnight, people's reach on Facebook went from 50, 40, 30, 20% to 1 or 2%. And the howls were pretty strong. What's going on here? This is what's going on. They needed a better way of selling advertising. So what they do now is when you post something, you'll see that there's a little button at the bottom that says promote your post. And for that, they'll suggest if you have a budget of $3,000, they'll guarantee that 1,300,000 people will see that post. You can promote that post. And people do it. It's a way of advertising because it shows up in your news feed. Now, the news feed promoted posts used to be a really good deal because you can target exactly who it is that you want to reach, right? Not just people of a certain age, not just people in a certain city, not just people with a certain interest. You can target people within a certain company. You can tweak the way in which you decide who's going to see your post in their news feed so exactly that you can decide everybody at Boeing who's a manager or higher is going to see this post, and that will happen. Part of that, a payoff of that, though, is that you accumulate more likes and they become part of your community. If it's just a one-off thing, there's a little payoff, but not a lot of payoff. But what happens under this system is that it doesn't matter if you have 100,000 people now, only a very tiny fraction of people who are part of your fan base are actually ever going to see what you do. So it's a real problem, and the other social networks, there's my little thing is a little out of order. The other social networks are following suit. So you'll see this graph. This is, total likes. So I can increase my number of likes up here, but see the reach practically doesn't move.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So that was so noticeable for us and the Spokane Symphony, and actually had.
Can you, sorry, people need to hear.
Hi, Hi, I'm with the Spokane Symphony. People actually called me up and said, "You're not showing up in my feed anymore, and I can't. I'm missing it. How do I? I've liked it. What am I supposed to? I liked your page, and I'm not getting any information anymore by Facebook. It's just not showing up." So I wasn't sure what to do. I told them, "Okay, go on our page, go to all the posts that we've posted, like all the posts, the old posts that you haven't seen. Maybe that will tell Facebook, no, I really want to get this." But is that not working?
The best way to get to be a little more visible is they've published their algorithm, and the way to do it is when somebody does see one of your posts, or if you direct them to your page, get them to click on the article or the post that you did, write a comment on it or something. It's a combination of what they measure as the engagement. That's their official explanation.
There's also another way to get those people that are engaged on your page but aren't seeing it on their newsfeed. It's by actually having those people go to your page. Up in the top right corner, there's a little link. Pulls down a little drop box, and it says, "Have on newsfeed." That's what you really want, is those people to actually have you showing up on their newsfeed.
Right, right. You can do that too. What this says to me is, so there are all sorts of businesses that basically are struggling for business because of the change in the newsfeed. Upworthy, you all know Upworthy. Upworthy is sort of a phenomenon of the publishing business in the last year, and their trajectory growth. They don't actually really even have a website or a home page. You can go, but nobody really does. Their whole business model is built on social media. It lives in social media. They release something in the wild, and the whole reason that people pay any attention to it is it gets embedded, it gets shared on social media. And in December, their traffic plummeted precipitously just because of the algorithm change. So, so the lesson I think, is that don't build a business model on somebody else's platform. You need to be on all platforms. Like, for instance, the social media people kept saying, "Oh, email is done." Well, email actually isn't done. We have 35,000 subscribers on our emails, and we get more pop from the emails than we do from social media, right? You should be on all social media, and you can automate it. You should be blogging, because that's a way for content to live. But it is inevitable that every social media platform, this is Twitter. Twitter now, this is an ad on Twitter. Twitter is doing the same thing. They're a little bit behind, but it is inevitable that every social media platform is going to do some version of this. And you don't want to be held captive by a single social media platform. So, in all of this, we live in the age of big data, right? Big data is everywhere. People are getting funding for big data. There are all sorts of suggestions that big data is going to solve a whole lot of things. Already the people who are pioneers in big data aren't talking about big data in the way that they were even 2 years ago. They're talking about, problem isn't collecting more information. There's a lot of information. In fact, there's too much information out there. The real key to doing big data well is asking the right questions. You'd be surprised at how many arts institutions don't ask the right questions. What are you actually in the business of doing? Are you in the business of presenting concerts? Or are you in the business of creating demand for orchestra music? Those are two very different things. Are you in the business of selling a product, or are you in the business of creating community that creates demand for things that you're interested in. Those are two very, very different things. When you start trying to ask the right questions, then you start thinking about partnerships creatively. You start thinking about collaborations differently. You start thinking about how you position what it is that you do in a different way. If it's just to exist to sell a product, as we've seen from this kind of data, that's not very effective anymore. If it's to create something that people feel some passion about, that's a very different thing. But that's actually fundamental to your business model. Sounds kind of touchy-feely, but it isn't. It's actually essential to why it is that you exist and what it is that you're doing. So it's really important to ask the fundamental question. For me, the fundamental question is, what is it that I want to do that will get people to be interested in something? And to do that, you build an aesthetic around it. And from the aesthetic grows the product. From the how people feel about something grows the demand for something. So in all of this kind of data that you're sorting through, being able to ask the question that you want from that data is crucially important. How would you use that in a practical way? So you have you have a music education program. Everybody has a music education program because music education started going out of the schools and somebody had to do it, and this seemed like something that arts organizations should do, symphony orchestras should do. So there are a lot of arts education programs out there that are about product. Oh, we'll bus all the kids in and every 7th grader will get to hear a symphony orchestra concert. What does that do? Does that create demand for what you do? Does it increase kids' desire to want to do something? Why do arts education programs exist? It's, I think, not about exposing them to products. It's about getting them to feel something, to understand an aesthetic so that they have a demand for something that they care about. What you're doing is you're building something that cares about. If you do data collection around the things that you're doing, you can answer whether having an arts education program in the way that you're doing it is actually worth doing. Does that actually serve the aesthetic of what it is that you're doing? These are the kinds of sophisticated questions that you can ask about what it is that you do, how it is that you behave, that give you actual data on informing whether what you're doing is really what you want to be able to do. And it may be that doing an arts education program in the way that you're doing it doesn't actually serve what you're trying to do, which allows you to then refocus. So when we talk about big data and we talk about being informed by data, it's not just about where do I put my money over here and how do I sell my concerts over here and did I sell enough tickets over here. It's about fundamentally informing the kinds of strategic decisions that you make about which kind of organization you want to be. So I think actually we're about to come into an amazing period for the arts informed by data, but you have to use it. In fact, I'm going to leave you with this one last thing. So this morning, this is a story that was in the Stage this morning that I put up on Arts Journal. And ENO, English National Opera, the National Theatre, and the Barbican have hired a data scientist in residence. And what they're doing is, what this person is going to do is mine all of the data and think about data models and try and build insights into the audience. See, to me, all of this stuff is artistic decisions. It's not data over here and that teaches us how to market and that teaches us how to do stuff. Everything is an artistic decision that determines what kind of art you're going to do. Okay? So what would happen if you thought about data as an artist in residence? What if you use data as a canvas in which to understand your audience better? Artists actually already do that. What do artists do? They observe the world, they translate it into unique ways that we respond to. So you could do that with data. You could do that with social media. Think of social media as an artistic endeavor rather than a promotional endeavor. So thank you very much. If you want latest news, at artsjournal.com on Twitter. Constantly get stories. Every story that we do gets pumped out there. You can also go to the website. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes left. Does anybody have anything particular they want to talk about? Yeah. Please. Sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment. You said that they hired a big data scientist. In Kansas City, they just built a soccer stadium, Livestrong Park, and they have hired someone similar. And I mean, that's how they create their community. They have the specialist who sits in this hub, and you know, there's QR codes on every seat so people can check in, give bragging rights to their friends, and they just, by section, are collecting all of this sports fan information. And there's an article about it, I believe, in Fast Company. If you look up Fast Company, Livestrong Soccer Stadium, it's incredible the things that they are doing with it, and the things, maybe not everything that we can take from it in terms of budgets, but it really does get you thinking about what is possible with that sort of data.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of what I talked about today, it doesn't take a lot of money to do. It takes thinking about it in a particular way. You know, if you're going to dress your players differently, don't just dress them in T-shirts or something else. Make a collaboration with a fashion designer and make it an artistic statement. All of a sudden now you've got a way of talking to the fashion industry that you didn't have before. If you want to do something in technology, don't just go out and buy the technology. Go make a partnership with Microsoft or with Apple or something. You know, you've all seen, I'm sure, the new Apple ad with Esa-Pekka Salonen, right? It's sort of like, think about the cool factor. Think about partnerships in a way where you're co-building an aesthetic around what you do. And it isn't just about the partnership itself, it's a way of thinking about artistically what you do. So it doesn't take money, it takes imagination. And if you think about, you can think about it this way and have a limited result, you can think about it this way, and it opens all of a sudden lots of possibilities. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming.